Hello, everyone.
Am I on?
Yes, but you're sideways.
I'm sideways? Figures.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay. Well, I don't care if I
I'm not
look at you
sideways.
sideways.
You're sideways.
I'm sideways.
Yes, ma'am.
There we go.
Marshall,
Okay.
look at you.
Hi,
You look like a psychiatrist.
I'm here to help you with your problems.
Oh, let me talk to you
They tend
about
to be
my
emotional.
son and my car. And I see Magic Johnson in the background. Go Magic.
That's right.
Am I straight up? My neighbor who gets it and I don't. Hey,
Yes.
Greg. Am I sideways still? Okay. Am
Very
I?
good.
Oh, you look good.
Oh,
Hey, everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Hey,
Loud and
wait,
clear.
am I sideways or right up now?
No,
Right
you're
up.
Just can't quite see your face. I can see your lips, that's all. Now
Oh,
you're-
well. Wait, now I'm back sideways.
yeah,
again?
perfect.
I know, good, that's good.
Good.
Okay.
There's Glenn. Hi, Glenn.
Hello, how's everyone doing today?
Everyone's just
Good.
fine.
Where's your books, Glenn?
Oh, they're in the other, here, I'll show you.
Darn.
We have Evelyn's view. There's Linelda.
Nice.
Linelda.
I think we're good, yeah.
Peggy, I'll show you your favorite book.
Okay, what? The dictionary or thesaurus or Bible? Or Wuthering Heights?
Can I make a suggestion for Evelyn?
Sure.
If you can put on a light that would shine towards your face, because you're kind of
I'll
blocked out by
try.
your excellent background. Yeah.
Hey, John.
Good morning. Oh,
Afternoon.
How's that?
no real change.
Well, that's as much of a light
when
as
you-
I get over here.
Yeah.
So are we good
We're
to,
live.
good to go? Everybody's on board?
Yep.
Shall we begin?
Let us.
Okay, at 11:34, we will call the meeting to order. Town clerk, can we have a roll call?
Okay, Commissioner Shoemaker,
Here.
Commissioner David,
Here,
Commissioner Gossip Simon,
Here?
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Present,
Mayor Hillman,
Present?
Town Attorney Tercivia,
Here,
Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, let's proceed with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Guys? I pledge allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic
for
which
which
stands
it stands,
one nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
liberty and
liberty
justice
and justice for all.
Thank you.
Trying to be a little high tech here. We got an American flag going. Hopefully everyone sees that.
Yay.
Oh, all right.
Well done. Well done.
impressive.
well
I have
done.
one on my car outside, so that'll add to it.
Okay, so we are on 99, are we? Channel 99?
We are. There's a little bit, for those that are watching at home, there's a little bit of a delay. 99, it's going to be a little bit better on YouTube, but there are still a little bit of delay. So our two public speakers are probably watching us with a little bit of delay. We'll get them in when public comment commences.
Excellent. Okay, moving right along, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, I have two additions that I would like to add. One, I think we should add our attorney Glenn to speak about the beaches and what the legal aspects are in terms of the county's authority on the opening of our private beaches. There have been a number of questions,
There is no shade behind.
residents on the beaches, why we can't open them, et cetera.
Okay.
So I would like to add that right at the beginning. Let's call it 1A. And secondly, I would like to add a discussion on a freeze for the town for our employees.
Okay.
And that would also include the police department as well. And let's call that 2A. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to add or delete on the agenda?
Could I clarify those requests?
Certainly.
So we want to add private beaches early. Do we want to make that 5A as we don't have presentations and proclamations? And then
Sure.
we could do the other item as item 11G.
11, you say, you suggest?
G, yep. Does that work?
Where do you want that again, please? 11?
11G under new business for your second item, but the private beach quick discussion or discussion to be in 5A.
And then we would have the discussion on the hiring freeze following.
The minutes, approval of the minutes. It'd be a new item, the last of the new items since we're adding it today.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, just say aye.
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 Okay, let's proceed. Therefore, let's just move in then to a discussion about the beaches. Glenn, it's all yours.
Mr. Mayor, and Commissioners, welcome to everyone. As you're all aware, the county has decided quite several weeks ago that all beaches in Palm Beach County shall remain closed. This includes public and private beaches. Palm Beach County has been acting in concert with Miami-Dade and Brown counties. All three counties have decided that they would try to coordinate their reopening efforts. Their concerns that they express on the various phone calls are that, if beaches were open in Palm Beach County, they're worried that there'd be an influx of individuals from Broward and Miami-Dade. As you all know, that the rest of the state has gradually begun opening beaches over the last 2 weeks, I think starting with Jacksonville Beach 2 weeks ago, and as recently as I think today or yesterday, Martin County was going to begin opening theirs on a limited basis. However, Palm Beach County still remains under that closure order. There have been lots and lots of questions about public versus private beaches. Marshall and I have both reached out to the county, me to the attorney, he to the administrator, and we got the same answer. They, their position is that it applies to all beaches in Palm Beach County, public and private. Around the state, this was an issue until recently, until the governor modified his order, where the rest of the state was able to begin reopening a couple weeks ago. So, for example, Fort Walton Beach has been the subject of a federal court lawsuit on this issue. Interestingly, one of the plaintiffs. Pardon me?
Keep going, keep going.
Interestingly, the former governor, Mike Huckabee, was one of the plaintiffs in that case. He apparently owns property in Fort Walton Beach. And the federal court thus far has ruled in favor of the state. There was also a state court lawsuit also over the private beach issue. And so far in all of these lawsuits, the judges are ruling that, under the police powers of the state, which is very comprehensive, and local governments, they're allowed to close both public and private beaches. There have been arguments about due process, lack of compensation. Thus far, those arguments have not been availing. I don't know if there's any update from today's call that Marshall might have on beaches, as I wasn't on the 10 o'clock call today. But as of now, they still remain closed.
Yeah, so thank you, Glenn. Just to kind of piggyback on that, Glenn and I did go through those exercises, what options we had. State statute does obligate us to follow and enforce county orders. That's in state statute. So we are obligated to do that. But from our call this morning, last night, Juneau Beach, I think is wrestling with the same issue. The commission is wrestling with the same issue with their residents. And they approved penning a letter to the county asking that they accelerate consideration of opening the beaches. I haven't seen that letter, but Juneau approved that last night at their commission meeting and wants to move forward with that. What I got from the meeting is that tomorrow morning we're going to be talking about it, and everyone believes that following the commission meeting this morning, and based on some of the stuff from Juneau, I think the beaches task force is going to accelerate a bit and start taking a more diligent look at opening beaches in some facet, probably with restrictions, but they're going to accelerate that discussion a bit and probably reconvene the activities of that task group. County Administrator Baker has put a task force in order to work on the beaches issue that she works at locally, and then she's working with the mayor of Miami-Dade and the mayor of Broward County to kind of see what we can do in concert. But I think the word is getting out that folks would like to see their beaches opened in some fashion. Most of the communities are wrestling with the private beach issues first and foremost, and then the public beaches are starting to, people are wanting those to open a little bit. I know Juneau's a little bit more unique, but as far as how they have parking along the beaches and you can just walk to them, and they have a lot of people just parking on the street. So they've penned a letter. The commission authorized the mayor there to send a letter to the administrator and county commission, urging them to hasten the pace, if you will, to kind of get the task force back on considering opening those beaches. So that's the last update.
So would it behoove us to also send a letter?
Based on your conversation, if you like, I think it's maybe it adds a little bit more urgency to my words, Chief's words, and other communities. The more we kind of start saying, hey, we need to take a look at this. In our context, it's private. We're not going to be opening it up to the public. But again, their overall concern is that you open up one, it's kind of a surge point for everybody from around to get onto the beaches, and then, enforcement is going to be quite difficult. Anywhere to get police in uniform all over the beaches to scatter folks becomes kind of challenging. So I enforcement issue along with the public health. So I think those two things, but penning a letter saying, please pick this up, or please, put a focus on beaches. I don't see it hurts if the commission is compelled to do that.
Fellow commissioners, any thoughts?
I don't see a downside to sending a letter and requesting some guidance.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in?
I agree with Commissioner David, and I did note that Miami-Dade opened a park over the weekend and 9,000 people showed up over the weekend. And the county or the municipality, I don't recall, issued over 5,000 summonses to those not covering their faces or socially distancing. So let's send.
Oh, that's not good.
Right, let's send the letter, and then keep in mind that they had an influx that was beyond control.
Well, if we were
Partly.
the letter, my thinking would be we would send it for the use of the beach for exercise purposes only, not meaning no sunbathing. People would be using it for jogging, walking, swimming, etc. But we would not allow sunbathing, so people would not be out there lounging on the beach. They'd use it for activity only. We would ask our police to patrol it to make sure that was the case. Not that we would have, all of the police on it, but, an occasional look-see. There is no public access. There is only one small piece of the beach that's owned by the county, but there's no public access to that small piece. And, try to make the case in a brief letter. if you all think we should do that, Marshall and I could work on it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
if I could note that a lot of the requests have made the argument that the private portion of the beaches, which extends to the high water mark, as ruled by the state 2 years ago in that landmark case, that they own the land to the high water mark, and therefore they should have, they being the oceanfront dwelling residences, they should be able to use their property to the high water mark. There is that argument, if we need to weigh in on that with Mr. Torcivia or anyone else in the letter.
yeah, I think my opinion would be not to take so much of a legal aspect to it, but more the emotion of allowing our people to use it for exercise purposes, get them off of the street, because
Mhm.
hazard now on our streets because our sidewalks are so full.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I think it's important for our citizens to know that it seems like council is in total favor of opening the beaches. And that the problem, excuse me, is that the state and the laws are working against us at this point, even though we're private. From what I just heard Glenn say, our attorney, is that we have no choice but to follow the guidelines that comes down from the governor and then from the county. That even
Right.
if we wanted to refuse those guidelines and open up the beaches at just our town, that would invite litigation. Is that right, Glenn?
And theoretically, the invite litigation, I'm not sure if you get to the point with the county or the state where they would commence litigation. Frankly, I have a much more non-legal practical worry. If we were to open beaches and be the island out there with the only place beaches open, what Miami experienced and other places experienced when Jacksonville opened their beaches is a surge of people trying to get to our private beaches. Whether you call them public or private, if someone hears a beach is open and they're in Fort Lauderdale or Miami and they take a ride up and find a place to park, cut in there somewhere, get access someplace, whether it's Boca or Delray or Milani, I think that's the worry. And then we'd have our police force trying to control that surge. And I would like to think that the sheriff would come and help. But if we're disobeying the county's directive, I'm not so sure, where that's what I worry about. I worry about the practicality. If we have that surge on our private beaches, what kind of support are we going to get from the county or the state? Again, public safety, I think they would, but I worry about that.
So I think what I'm hearing is honestly that it's really not a matter of we would expect us to get sued and that a big deal would be made of the fact that we were going against the guidance from both the county and the state. But in fact, it's more about, we have Boca to our south, we've got Delray, where their parking is closed, where they're policing it pretty well, at least with vehicles and presence. That given we don't have any public access to our private beaches, that would be minimal. Even in the cases where it's been, I think, hyped by the media, as in the case of Jacksonville, where they showed views of the beach that was full, when in reality it wasn't, but it wasn't generating enough hype for them, so they showed the worst case scenario. The fact is, the county did not necessarily have a surge that was uncontrollable, and they already had a low number of cases. So even the governor agreed. That's why he supported it. So in our case, we also have low or no cases in Highland Beach that we know of. We have private access. That's fairly well controlled. We also have just one main street. Parking would be very easy to control. And parking is not even allowed on the north and southern ends of our borders. So I really don't see the safety factor being of concern. I don't see parking in a surge of concern. And so I would strongly recommend that, by a certain date, if really that the the county cannot support us, then we need to do what's in the interest of our private property owners and our condominiums to give them a chance to enjoy at least restricted use of the beaches, because I happen to agree with the mayor that the beaches could easily be focused on exercise, fishing, and kayaking, that kind of activity, exercise, not necessarily for sunbathing and, umbrellas and all of that. So I really would like to first go on the record that, I would like to see the beaches open. And I think we can show credible, a credible position that opening our beaches is not in violation of the safety, welfare, and health of our community, that we're very controlled, a very small 3-mile stretch, bordered by towns that are enforcing their own restrictions, which actually protects us. I don't think that the rest of Broward and Dade residents are going to come up here just to use our beaches when we know we can easily police that. So anyways, the other related subject to all of this is that some of these condominiums, and certainly in the case of Highland Beach Club, they have small pools. And so when they open up the pool, we're required to have, a full-time monitor or a guard, because the club doesn't have an extensive staff like some of the larger condominiums. That's an additional burden cost on the condominium. And since the residents can't go to the beaches, they have nowhere to go. They can only go to the pool. And yet, if they had an opportunity to go to the beach to get the exercise without necessarily crowding our sidewalk, and we've all heard the stories about our one sidewalk and how in the morning it's a zoo. So having the beaches open would give us some breathing room for the condominiums and the residents here that are so restricted as it is. So that's really what I wanted to add, and what I was very interested in our attorney's view is that it's not so much, certainly it's a possibility that litigation is a concern, but it's really more about whether we want to do it or not.
If I could, I wasn't that concerned about the county or the state. The litigation that I didn't discuss is, as in Fort Walton Beach, where you had citizens who had private beaches who sued because their access was being denied.
Right.
I don't want to discount the possibility of a citizen suing, claiming that we're jeopardizing their health. The flip side of that coin, that I could see that kind of a lawsuit, a citizen saying, you've opened your beaches, contravention to the county and state, you're jeopardizing my health. Maybe a low risk of that too, but I should mention that as a possibility. We haven't seen those lawsuits yet. We've seen the other side, but there's been certainly discussions among the attorneys as a potential risk. But I would say small risk.
I'd like to bring a different perspective in. I agree with John's analysis. I think he was spot on. However, just keep in mind that we don't really want to get into a major disagreement with the county when we need their help down the road, because we may not get it.
Evelyn is 100% right. The relationship with the county is far more important than a couple of weeks of waiting for the beach to be opened. So we have to look at this in a broader sense, if you will. So sending a letter with the rationale that John articulated, I think also is spot on. And if that helps getting the decision a little bit earlier, so be it. And I think we should do that. But we have to be mindful of the relationship. We don't want to just open the beaches in the face of all this and get the wrath of the county commission. We need the relationship. There'll be many other issues down the road that are equally, if not of greater importance to us.
Mayor, I'm in supportive of your letter, and I'm in supportive of the mandate of exercise and that sort of respect, opposed to just sitting out and sunbathing. Seems like a nice compromise, and the beaches are scheduled to be open as part of phase 1 anyway. We're in phase 0 at the moment of what the county put out. So it's not front running it that much. A letter probably does help get that happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it can't hurt. So let's take a shot. Okay, can we move on? Is there anything else on this subject?
you want a formal motion for the letter to go forward? Or are we good?
Is it necessary?
It'd be helpful just to memorialize it.
Okay, anybody want to make the motion? Shoot.
I motion that we write the letter in support of trying to make the beaches available to our community.
All in
Second.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, you need a
Aye.
second? Okay, aye. So be it. We're on to presentations and proclamations. There are none. So we can move on now to public comments. There are a few, as I understand. Does anybody know how many?
There's two.
Two, okay. They are
Yes.
5-minute duration and they can be
Okay.
of anything, not just agenda items, because we only have one opportunity. So Linelda, we'll turn it over to you.
Correct. The first one is Mr. John Ross.
Take it away, John.
I see him there. John, you with us? There you go. Wait, he's gotta get his audio up, I think. One second. John?
This is the first time we have these, so have patience, everyone.
Right.
John's not at a loss for words, that's for sure.
Wanna bring it in and switch it? See if Jack's ready? I'll give him a second.
Well, at least this Zoom seems to be working a whole lot better than when we tried Microsoft Teams. That was fortunate.
On the YouTube.
Yes.
I've been using Zoom for other meetings that I have, and it's really quite good.
Can you hear me?
There's only one person.
Can you hear me? I can hear you. You can't hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's start. I just have a few things I wanted to talk about. The first being for
Well, at
every,
least, this Zoom seems to be working a whole lot better than when we tried Microsoft Teams. That was-
oh, this is working. Can you
You gotta
hear?
turn off your YouTube.
And, it's really quite good.
No.
Hi, John.
I think his audio
Muted
just
him.
went out.
He,
You
There
can
he
hear?
is. Go, shoot.
Okay. The first being. There's a delay. Guys, what you got is a very significant delay. Okay? Oh, this is working. Can you
Turn off your YouTube.
turn off the YouTube? Okay, that was good advice. Good. Better?
Better.
Yes.
Okay. Good. I have a suggestion for you guys, which is when you're not speaking, mute your audio as there is significant over YouTube.
John, we can't because if we mute, we don't have the ability to unmute. I made that mistake twice now. We have to get that fixed.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, on the beaches, I just want to mention that you have apparently given permission for the hotel to use the
No,
as they are lined up shoulder to shoulder every day on lounges and using the beach and swimming. And actually, I saw a guy fishing the other day. Okay. All right, that's pretty straightforward. Well, yeah, that'll go away.
What that one though?
Yeah, that'll go away. Or not.
Yeah.
Okay, that took care of it. It was the guy Spam Lightly who always comes and visits me. So I and several people who communicate with me have been concerned about the action you took at your last meeting, in which a firm was chosen to do emergency repairs on the pipes without putting any limit on how much the town can spend in a given incident or as a total amount. I understand if the pipes blew up and we're spewing sewage all over the street, that might be your last concern. However, I do think that not putting a limit or an expectation of spend in an action like you took is kind of unprecedented. Now, I understand, I know you weren't approving a contract, or I don't think you were. And I don't think you were telling that vendor to spend what the total amount of money was, which was pretty nigh on $1 million. And I know that was just a price list, okay? But still, you guys know exactly what you passed at the last meeting and what our expected spend on those items would be. If you do, it flew by most of the people who were watching you, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was some. And I'd kind of like to know what your conclusions are, okay? Aside from that, I got nothing. All right. So, is this feed on Zoom going to go blank after the next person is recognized, and I should go back to you signing on to YouTube, or what?
If I could, when you're done, we're going to keep you in the waiting room a little bit in case one of the commissioners wishes to follow up. But then you will be bounced from the meeting. But we'll wait until make sure the commission doesn't have any questions for you or things of that nature.
Okay. So does that mean that there will be no public comments after the meeting on the whatever you discussed today?
That's correct, sir. With this one, we're going to go with one public hearing because we're still working out a few kinks. The meeting on the 19th, we will have a discussion to see if we can broaden that public comment period. So once we're working through the kinks, letting people in, out, working the mute function, we will stand each meeting more robust public comment. So this is just to kind of get it going.
That's all right. It's a step forward. It's actually working pretty well. All right.
Okay, was there anybody want to follow up or you want me to answer questions, yada, yada, yada?
No, bring on the next.
Okay.
Okay, the next person is Mr. Jack Halpern.
Mr. Halpern, you with us?
Here,
The floor is yours, if you will.
And you have 5 minutes, unless
I'm
given.
not in yet. Do you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. I had not planned to be on this part of the agenda. I didn't realize that there wasn't any closing comments at the end because I actually wanted to. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
clearly.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's a little bit of a delay.
There is. You got to turn off the YouTube or channel 99. Otherwise you get confused. There is a delay.
Oh, let me shut off YouTube. Okay. All right, YouTube is off. I had not planned to talk at the beginning of the meeting. I was going to wait till after later part of the agenda when Commissioner Gossett Seidman talked about the beach renourishment in Boca Raton. And I particularly want to discuss that after she gave her talk. And depending what she had to say, I may not have had anything to say after that, after her comments. So, but it sounds like I have to make comments now. I think I sent some material to her last night, including a memo that was written back in 2004, in which we had an opportunity to maybe try to stop Boca. But unfortunately, at that time, our commission wasn't interested in doing that. So I'm hoping that we're moving forward and that we're going to get involved in terms of our resource off of our beach, in terms of our sand resources, so we can stop Boca taking any further sands that will affect our beach in the future. So that's it. I gave my memo from 2004 to the commission to Commissioner Seidman. Thank you. And it's wonderful being before this new board. Welcome aboard the new folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay,
There are no more public comments.
okay, well, thank you both for participating. We appreciate it. And we appreciate your interest. I guess we can move forward on the agenda then.
Yes.
Into announcements, board vacancies. There are 3 vacancies for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. There's 1 vacancy for the Financial, but that's about to be filled. An interview has been finalized and the appointment, I guess, waits for the commission to interview the individual. Meetings and events, the next meeting is scheduled for the commission for May 19th, and that is tentative. I guess it's pending what is in front of us. Board action report, there are none. Ordinance and resolutions, there are none. Consent agenda, there are none. Unfinished business, there is none. So now we move on to new business. Boy, we got through that pretty quickly, huh? First thing in unfinished business is the discussion of the North Palm Beach ordinance. And Greg, do you want to champion this? Do you want to take us through it? You seem to
Sure,
have
Mayor, I'm happy to
knowledge of
take
it.
a crack at it. Okay, so last meeting we went around and we talked about the drafted ordinance that the planning board did. We asked to look closer at the North Palm Beach ordinance, which addresses a very similar situation. That was circulated to us. I'll kick off my thoughts. I've never said this before, but I actually really like that ordinance. I couldn't find anything in it I didn't like. It discusses landscaping and maintenance to even more detail than what we had in our draft ordinance. It addresses public nuisance in terms of not being allowed to store anything on the property, health and safety, not leaving any remains for previous demolition. It addresses fencing. It addresses the use of the dock. As I said before, it's very elegant on how it addresses the use of the dock. And I'm sure some residents won't like this, but it doesn't allow for electric at the dock if it's a vacant property, which makes sense because FPL is going to fight you on doing that anyway. So they did a good job of making sure their town didn't get caught in between FPL and a resident that wanted electric. They allow the use. They allow you to maintain it. They make sure you don't have to wreck something that has a 20-year useful life and is only a few years into it. And it combines really nicely with our current ordinance of if you have another property within 1,000 feet, you can unify the title if you really want electric over there. So I actually thought it was great. I don't have any negative comments about it. I'd like to incorporate the whole thing.
Anybody else want to comment on it?
I agree with Greg.
I have to say, it's very detailed. I mean, right down to how many inches the grass should be. I mean, it is about as comprehensive and complete as you can get, I think, without getting just crazy.
Yes, I agree, but I have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Jump in, sure.
Thank you. Understanding that there is no electric, I wonder how the owner therefore would irrigate the sod. If he's required to put sod down with no electric to run the irrigation system, I don't know how that would work. Just seems like a little bit of a hitch there.
I can answer that, Commissioner.
Please, that'd be great, Greg. Thank you.
There's actually really, there's a good example of that on the other end of Intercoastal Drive at the
Yes, I
south
hear
end
you.
with the Stanley property.
Right, yeah.
They put up 2 tripods with 2 sprinklers, and they've got it hooked up into the town water, and they just periodically go turn it on and turn it off. So it doesn't have to necessarily be watered every day, but I think they do it probably a few days a week.
They do it
And,
manually?
they're doing it manually from what I can see.
Yes, I understand. I just wanted to point that out, that that could be an issue. I don't have an issue with it, but could be raised. Thank you.
I thought I read something in their reasoning that they did exempt for watering, that they dealt with it separately. They just don't want the electricity going to the dock.
I didn't remember that. Let me look.
Oh, so you can have electricity then on the property, just not on the dock?
Yeah, that's what it seemed to say. I have no idea personally.
Well, that would answer the issue then, wouldn't it?
Certainly.
And then Mr. Roman sent me a text that they do have battery operated sprinkler systems needed to do more zonation on.
Right, I heard about, right, okay. Thank you. I was aware of that, but I just wanted to bring it up as a possible issue.
I think it's a great finish. And again, if there was something ever to come up in the future, we could deal with it, but I think this is good for now.
Or we'll call North Palm Beach.
One other thing to point out, on the North Palm Beach piece, page 19, they allow use. So they allow use of the dock.
Correct. Correct. So the way they did it was very elegant. They said you could only have one vessel there. You're not allowed to rent it out, not
Right.
allowed to live on it. And as we were talking about in our last meeting, since you can't have electric at the dock, that de facto kind of limits the size of the boat you can have.
Yeah, which is
Because
perfect.
If you have a large boat and you don't plug it in, you're kind of foolish because you're not going to be running the air conditioning and the village
Yeah.
systems and everything else. So it basically says, yeah, you can use your dock, but you're going to have to keep a small little runabout there, or kayaks or sailboat or something like that.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But our write-up does not allow it.
Correct.
You
That's
were-
why I like incorporating their entire write-up.
I'm with you. But there's no parking. So how do you use it? You have somebody drop you off?
That's a very good question.
What's the big deal with parking? If you look at page 19 on the top, 8E. The upland portion of the lot shall not be used for storage, parking, or any other accessory use. So you can't,
Perhaps they mean long-term parking or full-time 24/7 parking and not temporary.
well, that might be the intent.
Right, that might be the intent without delineating it.
Right. And Glenn
I
and
read it that way.
Marshall, let me know if this makes sense, but I think this kind of dovetails nicely with our current parking ordinance where you can park on the street as the homeowner.
Mhm.
So I think a homeowner could park one car, 2 cars if they want in front of their property.
Well, that
and
might be it.
go use their boat, right? Because of what we passed in a few meetings ago.
Yeah, and I did read it that it was really intended to prevent the storage of vehicles on the property.
Right.
1, 2,
Right.
and 3. And that when they do come to the property, the fence doesn't necessarily come right onto the pavement, that they would park right there. For what would be fairly quick access. It's not like they're gonna be spending the whole day there anyway, so
Oh, well, that could be it then. It could be you park on the street,
Right.
walk in, then that's fine.
it's
Okay.
fine.
Right.
That's the way I read it.
Yeah, so if we adjust ours to accommodate theirs, just like you're saying, Greg, just kind of lift theirs, then
Exactly.
We're done.
sounds good to me.
So Vice Mayor Bobby, I
Yes,
have
sir.
let Len Rubin know that you thought the ordinance he drafted for North Palm was very elegant, and he appreciates that.
Please do.
Tell them
Right.
double thumbs up.
You could keep a driveway apron under this ordinance, so you could potentially park off of the road to allow for people to move through and temporarily or for a few hours use your property without driving all over it. You can get off the road and just park in the apron.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Mr. Mayor, whereas, just wanted to point out that I'd requested Marshall to let us know how many permits for dock and jocks have been issued. Since 2014, we have had 67 permits issued. And so I felt that was an interesting number just to share. And the fact that the single issue now that we're addressing being a dock on an empty lot is not common. So I think that the North Palm ordinance with a few of our tweaks will work fine, and that many of the dock permits do not involve this. This is just sort of a simple fix for a unique situation.
I'm totally in agreement. Yeah. Anything else before we give the direction to, what kind of tweaks do we want to make here?
Well, we just discussed the parking.
Yeah, well, I think I misinterpreted it actually.
Oh,
I
okay,
think I
okay,
think the
great.
parking dovetails nicely with our current parking ordinance.
Right, I agree.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah.
So this takes us to process or procedure. I could have Ingrid and Len draft this up in our format, bring it back to our next meeting for a first read, or did you want to do some other means by which to do this? You seem very comfortable in liking this. Do you want to move it back to the planning board, or want to just continue on and
I think we,
put this?
correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we just have our first read?
No, we have not had a first read. We had to put it in the appropriate format to be read into our ordinance. So we would do a first read. We could do that as early as May, next meeting, May 19th. And then second read would probably come that second meeting in June or sometime in there, because you need 30 days between the first and the second read, but you don't have a big time delay or notice requirement for the first read. So we could get the first read by May 19th. The second read would probably not come until the second meeting in June.
Why such a delay? I'm just curious. Is it just to give people a chance to read and give feedback?
Due process, public notice on that second read. We have to provide at least 15 days notice in the paper of general circulation. Yes, I know some people think no one reads newspapers, but we post it and provide that notice on the website and in the paper. So we want to make sure everybody has ample opportunity after the first read to submit any public comments. And just by the natural tendency of when you can get it in the paper, the date you'd approve that first read on the 19th, by the time you got it to the paper and the publisher, you'll miss your next meeting. So it automatically, even in 15 days takes you past the 2 weeks. So it kicks the meeting.
If I could, and what Marshall just explained is the textbook way and the way we normally would do it. If there's some reason that the commission wants this ordinance expedited, occasionally I've had towns that will advertise the second reading before the first reading. That's dicey because if you make changes on the first reading, you've just wasted the money on that ad. But I'm not recommending that, but since it seems like you're kind of hurrying to do it, but just want to let that option exist. I don't think it's a great option.
And I would say right now, as we're in this virtual environment, let's give a little bit of time for public in case we miss something, because we did really want or like that concept of getting the public to participate in each read. So this would give them enough time, even if we can't have more robust in-meeting public comment, this gives them time to send us an email or write or call you in the in-between. So
Okay.
Right. Mayor,
Anything
would you like a motion?
before we move on? I'm sorry.
Would you like a motion?
Sure.
Make a motion to convert the North Palm Beach ordinance into the Highland Beach format for the purposes of a first reading at the next commission meeting.
Second,
Well said.
Well done.
Evelyn, seconded it?
seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
So be it. Let's move on to the crosswalk enhancement project, and I'll refer that to Marshall.
Thank you. So our crosswalk issue continues. We've got a design. We went out to bid. The bid prices came in high. We were waiting on what looks to be some good work on Faye's part to get us some state appropriated funding. We're still waiting. I still don't have it in hand or some type of authorization. Could be a little bit of delay from the state. That being said, the bids were too high for us to even consider moving forward in the contract, even on a reduced scope. Would still be beyond our charter. So I canceled the RFP, as I had indicated to you folks, just because we can't sign a contract. Now, I've also fielded calls and comments, questions. We've seen all the emails. I'm sure people are calling you. What do you want to do? That's really where I said this. I don't know if we get it all done today, but maybe in the next couple of meetings, defining that final scope. And the reason being is, even if our prices come in better, I still believe we're going to be it for a full scope project. Even with the state funding reducing it, I think we're going to teeter on our charter limits. So we would have to consider a referendum. And I don't know everybody's desire to put this before the voters for this full scope of the project, or is there the desire to scale it back to a point where with state dollars and ours, we still keep it under that charter limit, or at least our contribution under the charter limit, which would give us the ability to go, if the state gets the money to us, about 550. We can't do the full project at 550, even with better pricing. I still think we're going to be up against a wall on that. So I guess I want to know what you would like as far as the scope of a project, and if we maybe don't get to the final scope, maybe a dollar amount threshold, and then we can fit a scope to that. As I indicated in the memo, we're also looking at different means to deliver the project, whether we do contract manager at risk, maybe we do direct acquisition of all the materials and just hire someone to install it. That might give us, especially if we scale the project back, if we go out and direct acquire, we don't pay taxes on it. We probably don't have to pay some of the profit margin on the acquisition. We might do better and then just find a contractor to install it. But again, the contractor, it's just not slamming a pole in the ground. You got traffic control. There's going to have to be some ADA ramp improvements throughout. So there is still some cost to installing the signs. It's just not a simple, putting up a stop sign. It's a little more elaborate. But that might be another method we could take a look at, or if we like the full scope, we go back to the design bid build concept and get a referendum question together and take that to the voters on the presidential ballot. We probably have to make that decision pretty quickly here over the next meetings to meet the deadline, so Linelda can get something together, or Glenn could develop it and I can get it to Linelda to put on the ballot. So I guess I'll turn it over there, just looking for some guidance and what we want to do.
Well, let's start this one in reverse. We'll start with Greg.
I love it. I had a question, Marshall, and then I can give some comments on it. Do we have any update on when we're going to hear from the state? We know this potential money from the state, but do we have is there a date or a potential date or a required date do we hear by?
I'll turn it over to our liaison. Peggy, it's you.
Okie doke, my new title. Yes, we would receive this $201,523 on July 1, beginning of the new fiscal year. There is a chance that the legislators will be called back to Tallahassee to revisit the budget in June. There is that chance due to the COVID-19 virus in the event that they have to reconfigure funding. I spoke with our Representative Caruso. His office does not feel that our funds would be in any jeopardy. They would be looking for a larger pot to draw from in that event that they have to reconfigure the budget. So the governor still needs to sign the orders, whether or not they go back to Tallahassee, and it would be in our bank that first week of July. Just as an add-on, I will update people on the request for $700,000 for swale repairs. It did not make it through the final appropriations, and the reasons are varied, simply because it was a large amount without matching funds, without an exact plan. So as we move forward, depending on the economic environment, we will revisit that, as will as our representative down the road. So we're looking at July 1, and we need to use that money, use it or lose it. So that's the update I have.
Excellent. And then Marshall, does July 1 give us enough time if we still wanted to do a referendum if we found out the answer was no?
Yes, if you were to consider that, yes, I think we would have, as I understand it, we would have the fiscal year to spend the money. The referendum's in November. And if you guys went to a referendum, that means you want the full scope of the project. So we already have everything for a full scope. So we could move forward in a pretty quick fashion and, ask the question. If the question fails, then move forward with the reduced scope and still be able to capture those committed dollars from the state.
Got it. And then one last question for anyone out there who wants to answer it, whether it's Peggy or Marshall. The 3R project, what was the latest potential dates on that? 5 years out? Was it somewhere around there?
Let me get to the exact dates. I have that schedule right here on my computer. Let me get that for you. Again, I think it's, let me see. Let me not talk here.
And the
Well,
reason why I
Marshall-
ask these three questions is, to me, I think we certainly should do something. I think we should find out if we're getting the state money or not first. I'm open to a referendum if we don't get any state money. I've been more biased to a project that gets done that doesn't get destroyed if they come through with a 3R project. If we think they're definitely coming through, it seems to me a little silly to put the street lights and that sort of stuff in the road if they're going to get destroyed, which at that point might be 4 years later. I'd rather do a moderately scaled project with everything we know we can keep, and then try to do that as an add-on after the 3R comes through. But I think the first step in my mind is let's figure out if we're getting the state money or not. And if we're not, and we can't get anything done with the 350, which sounds like we can't, then leave it up to the voters.
So in response, our project looks like construction would begin in 2024. The design begins this August. So in a few months here, they'll start designing the project. They'll get 30% plans by June of 21, 60% plans by March of 22, 90% by January of 23, 100% plans by May of 23. They'll let the project in September of 23 and construct in 2024. So you're right, your timing's about right. They're 4 years out from construction. Yeah, we've had that discussion before. Let's do what we can in the road right of way that can be salvaged. Not worry about added lights that would have to be in some component of it lost. Glenn and I have talked, if you do a two-phase project and it's separated by that kind of time, those aren't linked projects that would hamstring you by the charter. But again, if you separate it, you would have two separate projects that would be under the charter amount, especially figuring the state funding. I'm pretty confident, seeing what Peggy's told me and then the emails from Caruso, they're pretty confident we're gonna get the money. Even if we get tripped up by COVID, I think it'll be back in the queue the following year. So,
I mean, my bias, I always feel a little, weird about spending taxpayer money on a product that has a long useful life of 10 or 15 years, and we're going to destroy it in 4 years. just feels to me like it's a bit of a waste of the money. So I'd rather, my bias would be see if we can get the state money, do a project to the fullest extent of the state money plus our 350, and do the nice add-ons to the project like the lights in the street after the 3R comes through. So at least we're not destroying, a good component of it.
And FDOT has indicated, I don't want to scratch old wounds, but I would believe FDOT, since we already have the plans designed, if we passed a resolution committing funds to do some in-road work as part of this project, minor in scale, this stuff is considered minor compared to what we asked last time. And we already have the design work done, we could probably tie it to their project and they would bid it for us on a bigger scale and scope and probably get better pricing for some of the in-road work because they're bidding, billions of dollars worth of work a year versus, our, 500,000-600,000. So
I like that as well. And then in terms of how to bid it out, whether it's a design, bid, build, or any of those other options, I'm kind of open to all of them as long as we think the town can handle it. I don't want to make poor Pat Roman become, a civil engineer trying to design roads and, just overtaking his life. As long as you said, hey, I think we can handle this, we can do this a more efficient way within the town without killing ourselves, I'm certainly open to it. Those are my thoughts.
Mayor,
Yes,
I have a problem in any effort to ask for a referendum. I mean, again, it's in the echoes of the most recent referendum where I don't think this town wants to spend, $1 million on anything. Unless it's, critical infrastructure, something that's real obvious, the pipe flow. So I'm thinking, honestly, given the difficulty this year for people and their jobs, and maybe pressure on the town next year because of less revenue sharing and maybe an impact on our budget, that for the next couple of years, we need to have, I guess, a little more financial concern that we're not going to have as much money as we would normally have, one. Two, to implement a project and ask for the town to start spending more money, I think that's going to be a failed mission. So my suggestion, and again, I'm really open on this, is just that I don't see a need for this extravagant project with the crosswalks. I just don't see it. I see us, if we can get the money from the state, wonderful. If we can get that extra money, that's great. We always want to take it. It's not guaranteed and it may come not this year, next year, whatever. But all we need to do is repaint the crosswalks on the ground, on the pavement. We don't have to do anything fancy more than that. And as far as a light goes, I mean, we could have an electric light, a yellow light flashing with a push button. That's it. We got 8. I mean, it would seem to me, what, $50,000 per light? We got 8. That's $400,000. It would seem to me if it's a single light, they don't cost that much. I could be wrong, but it would seem to me we could get it for $30,000 a light plus paint. Whether we do it ourselves, order the lights, get the wiring or whatever is needed to hook it up, but keep it simple. And then you never know what's going to happen with A1A, whether it's going to be 2, 3, 5, 7 years from now, given again difficulties the state might have. So I'm more interested in not having a big project, not going to a referendum, keeping the project simple, but addresses the safety issue for crossing at least in 8 spots. Some will argue that, well, we really need 12. But the fact remains, we can address safety. We can have a light, maybe 2 at each crossing, 1 on either side of the road. And that's even a concern to me. It would seem to me you could have 1 stanchion with reflecting light in both directions. I don't know. But there's got to be a way to design it so that this is not a big project. I would think we could keep it well under 400,000 to begin with. Am I so crazy here?
okay. Peggy? Peg?
Yes, thank you. 3 quick things. One is I concur with just about everything Greg said. And two, I concur with John in the sense that it worries me to set up another referendum. The word scares citizens, especially in this financial climate where we're not sure where the town, state, or federal government is going on things. But it always bothered me to spend taxpayer money on a state road, which they're responsible for. It always bothered me, like I don't pay for Publix's parking lot, not directly. Lastly, to address some concerns I had from several residents. One was right after the last meeting that we had in person. He was the president of Bird Beach. There is concern that the 8 crosswalks serve only a portion of the community. So I took my truck and I mapped out the distance between crosswalks. And here they are, just for the record. Boca Highlands, starting there at ground zero, it's 1 mile to Highland Regency, the next one. The next crosswalk's at Toscana, it's 0.2 mile. Next crosswalk at the Highland Beach Club, that's another 0.4 mile. The next one, Coronado, 0.2 mile. Ambassadors, 0.2 mile more. Penthouse Towers, 0.3, and Delray Sands, 0.3. This puts 6 of our 8 crosswalks within a reasonably 1.5 miles in a 3-mile town. Just so the public is aware, these were not our decisions of this current commission or any recent commission. This was established every time a condo built a beach club or they had portions on each side of A1A, they were required to have a crosswalk. And so what we have now is failing crosswalks, and we must repair the 8 that are failing. Down the road, certainly this commission or any other would consider additional crosswalks to perhaps make up for the disparity to cross, say, in the north end of town or between Boca Highlands or Highland Regency. But I don't want the public to think we're just fixing up these established crosswalks. It's really not the case. We're fixing up the ones that are failing. Down the road, we'll look at others. Just wanted to point that out. And I'll make this available to everyone. I didn't have time before the meeting.
Thank you.
That helps.
Okay, Peggy,
Yes, sir.
sorry. The analysis that you just did,
Yes,
my understanding, I could be wrong, is that the location of the crosswalks were determined by FDOT. And that
yes.
the beach had nothing to do with it. Is that
Well,
correct?
I was told it was by FDOT, by a commissioner who was serving in the 90s. And, but that was a requirement by the state, the county at the time. That's why they're there. They were crossing a lot of people living on the west side who were utilizing the beach club on the right side of the road going north.
So it was a call made by
It
not
was a,
officials from our town, but by FDOT.
correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It- Technically,
Other one?
I
Marshall?
was under the,
Go ahead.
okay,
Ed.
I've
Come back to
been under
Marshall.
the impression that we don't get to choose to add any crosswalks. That FDOT has to agree to our adding them. We can't just do it without their approval.
Oh,
I
yes,
think
you're right.
Marshall's going to fill us in on that.
Yeah, I was just addressing the fact that residents are requesting them. It's something that we could look at down the road, not that it is our decision. Certainly it is not, to clarify. You're absolutely right, Evelyn. Thank you.
I think Marshall's going to fill us in more on that after you're finished, Evelyn.
Right.
Okay. I think that based on finances, at this point, it would be very wise of us to separate out the embedded lights from other aspects of this project. Because the embedded lights adds a huge amount and they're going to be destroyed in a few years. So we could do that separately, hopefully, at a different point. I don't know what's wrong with our crosswalks. So it's not that I don't think there's anything wrong. It's just that I'm not sure what everyone is talking about. I do understand that they're difficult to see. I mean, we have signs with no lights, and yes, we undoubtedly should have lights certainly for at night to catch people's attention, because you're not going to do it just by a sign in the road. But let's see what we can do for our 350 plus state money. And perhaps we should price it out at just the 350 without state money in case we don't get it. But I do know that a referendum is not a good idea because just the word is going to set people off. Makes absolutely no difference what it's going to say. And we can't, right now, we can't count on the state. So perhaps we should have a separate plan so that, because people have been clamoring for updated crosswalks for a long time. So we have to do something. But maybe if we could put this project in stages. So you do one thing at a time, and perhaps one of the stages would be that we see what we can do for 350 and then have the second stage in the 200 range, so that if we get the state money, we just combine stages 1 and 2 at the same time. And if we don't, then we do stage 1 and upgrade next year or the year after. And just so people understand that we are working with it, but we want to do it on a budget and it will eventually get there.
Thank you. Marshall, you had something you wanted to add about the location or the selection of locations on crosswalks?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayor. So we've had this conversation, it's been a while, but again, FDOT, as part of our current project, is not contemplating adding additional crosswalks. They may, with the 3R project, if we request a crosswalk, at which point they would have to develop a warrant, is what they call them, under the manual for uniform traffic control devices. Basically, like how many people are crossing there, does it, if you will, warrant a crosswalk to be installed? Is there enough traffic going across A1A that they would put that in there? And they anecdotally said they don't believe so, but they will look at it as part of the 3R project. If there is a being necessary for a closer evaluation, they'll do that evaluation for us and see if it's warranted by engineering standards.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mhm.
I want to say a couple of things about crosswalks, but I want to be a little more general if I may. We clearly have to be fiscally responsible. There's no question about it. We're dealing with and spending residents' money here. So personal feelings aside, our role is that of governing the town. And we are definitely going into uncertain waters here with the economy. With that said, however, I believe that anything we do here for our town, we need to do properly. And I'm not saying everything has to be first class, but I think everything has to be at a Highland Beach standard. And Highland Beach is a kind of top of the line town. We are not a moderate town here. We're an upper moderate town. And I don't think that we should be doing things for our town that are not of a higher caliber. So when we look at our crosswalks, they obviously have to fulfill a safety standard, and they have to be at a higher end safety standard. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be the best crosswalk known to mankind, but I don't think they should be just okay crosswalks. And I think that standard should apply to anything that we do. So the idea of doing it in phases, because we're looking at uncertain financial times, clearly makes sense to me. And I really like that idea. However, we're also faced with a $350,000 project situation. So I've got to look to Glenn and Marshall to say, how does that fit within our charter? Can we break this into segments, or is it part of one project? So if we spread it out over whatever, 2 or 3 years, can we actually do that? Because if it ends up costing $600,000, is this still defined as one project? That's question one. I love the idea of not doing the embedded lighting now because it's going to get torn up in 2024. And by the time we actually do this, it's 2021. So why spend money that's going to get torn up in 3 years? Greg clearly makes sense with that right off the top. That's not good business. But if it's part of the same project and it's over 350, which obviously it is, can we actually go back and add that at a later date? So if we can do that, I'd love to do it that way. But does that mean we have to go to a referendum? I'm not afraid of a referendum at all if what we're talking about doing is the right thing for the town. So John, I know everybody's afraid of referendums, don't want to spend money foolishly, but if it's the best thing for our town, then it behooves us to do it and to present it properly. So I don't think now's the time to be spending $700,000 on crosswalks. So I agree with you, John, from that aspect. So question one, Glenn, is it one project? Is it not one project?
I'm going to give you a wonderful lawyer answer. It depends.
No.
Yeah. I'm very mindful of the limitation in the charter. And Marshall and I have had several conversations about, is this one project or multiple projects? And is it in one fiscal year or 2 fiscal year? And as Marshall's already indicated, if we spread it out over more than 1 fiscal year, that's a good check mark. If you bid it out as one project, that's kind of a demerit. Although we've talked about if you bid it out as 2 different projects, you're probably going to wind up spending maybe more money because the cost of mobilization. So I don't want to give an abstract answer. It's going to wind up depending on the facts when we finally get to the point of bidding this and scheduling it. But if the commission's direction is to try and structure it in a way where we can legitimately not go through the referendum, then we will do everything we can to do that. Unless that's not possible. If the project's a $700,000 project, an $800,000 project done in 1 fiscal year, then that's pretty self-evident. But if it does wind up being a project that we can put over a couple of years and we have some state dollars and not all town dollars. So we've talked about all those different options as to how to do this. One other thing I should mention, we talked about elections. I was speaking with the supervisor of elections office the other day. At this point, they are not planning on having any municipal issues on a ballot until next March. So the August election, primary, and the November general election, their current posture, again, this might change, is that they're not going to be accepting any municipal referendums. So we'll see how that plays out, but that could have an impact on the time.
Yeah, that gives us more time to think all this through.
Mr. Mayor,
The fact that embedding lights is fiscally irresponsible because they would be torn up in 3 years. To me, that makes it a separate project. I don't know if legally that makes it a separate project, but from a fiscal standpoint, it does. So that might happen.
So that's exactly an issue that we've talked about. Embedding the lights seems as if it's a standalone issue.
Yeah.
And if it's bid that way as a standalone issue in a separate fiscal year, now we've checked off a couple of good boxes. And that is an expensive part of the project. And again, I think the question that none of us know, at least I don't know, is if you embed the lights as part of the inversion project, is that $1,000? And if you embed them a year later, is that $500,000? Using very extreme examples. So
Sure.
what is the different cost of that? And is that spread so large that you say, okay, let's bite the bullet and go to referendum?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sure, John.
again, I'm sorry to be redundant, but I just must reinforce that we should, for the next 2 years, avoid referendum at all costs. I just don't think the town would have a stomach for it. I don't think it's needed. I do think a very good plan to even create two parts, two phases, where we just do the lights and the paint one year, and then maybe down the road, do the embedded lights and the pavement. But in all cases, I would expect that we could salvage the lights regardless of what they do with the road now or in the future. So it's the only exposure we have is any improvements that are significant and expensive to the road itself with embedded lights and that sort of thing. No bricks, red paint, all this stuff that they're doing elsewhere. I just don't see that the town needs that. And we could also look at in the future, maybe just doing maybe the 4 major crosswalks and then start adding them as we go forward. There's got to be a way to keep this under, $350,000. It just blows my mind that we can't do it for less than that.
I would think, Commissioner Shoemaker, to follow up, I think we can make it within our charter limits if we scale it back. The big scope of the project really was the embedded road elements and the red paint together. That added, $300,000 to the project cost. You take that off, now we're back around 350. You add the state money, we're looking at a lesser amount and still reaching our goal, because the dollars on a scaled back project, if you will, have already been allocated from the discretionary sales tax dollars. So we're not adding any future budget dollars to do a scaled in project. We've already, and they're not ad valorem tax dollars. They're the infrastructure tax dollars that we got. So a scaled down project we can do. And then going back to Glenn, that's what we discussed. It wasn't going to be 1 fiscal year or 2 fiscal year separation. We're talking 3 or 4 years separations, which gives us a really comfortable that if in 4 years everything looks better and we're ready to do the embedded, that element does have the essence of a unique project in and of itself, different from the one we would do in 2020, the one that you would do in 2024,
Correct.
2025.
We're closing in on it. We're getting there.
Okay.
I have a question. If we scale this back, does that affect the money we would get from the state, since it was based on information that is no longer accurate?
I don't know. I'd have to take a look. I'll look that up with Teresa. I don't believe we made a commitment that we wanted pedestrian activated signals, but I'll have to take a look at that element. That's a good question. I'll have to see if that does have an impact.
I don't think that's a very good question at all.
What's that?
I don't think that's a good question.
Well, we just don't say anything and hope for the best.
Okay, anything else on this before we move on to the next subject?
I've got some good marching orders, and I'll do some more investigation and come back with some more detail to this conversation. So I appreciate some guidance here, and
Sounds good. Some very good input here. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we move on now to discussion about the town commission meeting schedule. Marshall, you're back on again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I know there was some concern. If we look at the ordinance change we made, the second meeting we made as a may meeting, or basically meaning it's tentative, it's not a shall. First meeting of every month shall occur. So we're more obligated to do that. The second meeting, we've canceled 2 of them, and the cancellation did come from my office. The latter of those 2 cancellations happened under the emergency order. We're totally protected there. I could cancel a meeting. Before, the concern may be, can I, if for a lack of agenda items, cancel a meeting when technically the ordinance says may be canceled by action of the commission? So if Glenn could weigh in, or do we need to modify, or if everyone's comfortable that when there is truly no agenda, I can cancel a meeting, or do we want to put that in back into the ordinance and the like? So Glenn, if you could help me on this one a touch, that would be helpful.
Well, the way I'm, reading this is obviously you shall have a monthly meeting on the first Tuesday of each month. And then you struck out the old requirement of the third one, and you now say the town may schedule different meetings as necessary. So if it's not scheduled, there's no need to cancel. That to me is kind of self-evident. So if the commission decides you're going to have a meeting the first meeting of the month and then not schedule the second ones, then your next paragraph sentence kicks in. The meeting may be rescheduled or canceled by majority vote. Well, if you're not scheduling it, then you're not canceling it. So to me, I think the guidance that we both would like is the commission desirous of having regularly scheduled second meetings, or you just want your regularly scheduled first meeting? And if there's a need for a second meeting, either the commission at the first meeting says we're having one, or Marshall can say we need one. So which direction? Because again, I don't read it that the second meeting is a shall, it's a may. So you don't need to schedule the second meeting if you don't believe there's a need to schedule one.
So, but again, we approved a meeting schedule, kind of had those dates in there. Should we have, if we decide to take a more, I don't know the right adjective at the moment, but if we change the schedule to say optional meeting, then
Right.
it's optional. We don't, because right now it shows that we've approved a meeting schedule where we've approved a meeting schedule, and I've canceled something that the commission approved a schedule. So that seems to be to be the issue. We will be just kind of going on schedules, be revising that schedule. So we might be able to take care of this issue because we are kicking off budgets internally on Friday. And we have a budget schedule that I shared with the commission. So some of those dates aren't on your approved meeting schedule. So maybe we revisit the schedule and make those second meetings optional, at which point in time, maybe some of the technical concerns are alleviated.
And
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, doesn't it make sense that if the mayor and the town manager together decide that, look, we don't need this meeting, that he can just go ahead and either cancel it or just have it?
Could we change the wording of that statute and say, instead of saying that it must be approved by the commission, why can't we say by the commission or the town manager as needed?
I love it. That's great language. Excuse me being emotional about that, but I like that a lot. I believe in giving flexibility. I would even venture to go out on a limb and say, delete that whole sentence that says a meeting may be rescheduled or canceled by majority vote of the previous meeting if it's known that a quorum will not be present. Why are you limiting yourself so much? You could simply say you shall have this one meeting and may schedule other meetings as necessary. And if you want to define by motion or by resolution, not having to always come back and change this ordinance, say, meetings shall be scheduled by the mayor, manager, or commission. And that way everybody has the opportunity to schedule a meeting if it's necessary. Just kind of thinking a little bit outside the box and trying to give you, especially with COVID, you realize how important flexibility is. So I'm thinking more and more of how to make things more streamlined, more flexible. Your one mandatory meeting, everything else, eliminate that sentence and just simply say meetings may be scheduled as necessary, period.
I like that.
When have you seen two lawyers agree before?
Never.
Hey, I tell you, excuse me, but first Greg is saying Len does elegant work. Now Evelyn and I are agreeing. Something good must be going on here.
Write this down at 3:01 on 5/5. Sounds good. Marshall,
do you
you
want-
comfortable?
Was it that?
Marshall?
Did you want me to draft up
yeah,
that change?
This, whatever the commission desires, if everybody kind of nods in the screen that the modification would be appropriate, then we'll move that way. If there are more comments, do something more formal.
I'm good.
I'm on board. I thought it was great.
Good.
I'll draft up that short little amendment to the ordinance and get it to Marshall in the next couple of days and put it on the next agenda.
Okay, so be it.
So everybody's good? Everybody's nodding yes?
Yes, agreed.
Yep,
All right.
we're all good. Okay, anything else on that? Can we move on?
Nope.
Okay, next is a discussion on the commission meeting minutes. For some time now, I've been concerned about the minutes that we have. And I've held off until I became mayor and got on the commission. Concern is the amount of time it takes and expense that goes into developing our minutes. They are about as close to verbatim as they can be. And in fact, up until recently, they've pretty much been verbatim. So I asked Linelda to take a look at a handful of other towns, surrounding towns, some large, some small, to see what they've done. And she pulled at random about 10 towns, and you see in the packet a summary of those towns. And none of them are verbatim. Some
Mr.
are
Mayor,
extremely brief summaries.
Mr. Mayor? can I just say that Peggy is shuffling papers, and so there's making a lot
Yeah.
of background
All right.
noise.
I'm confused. Go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
do you want me to continue or do I need to start again?
I'm good.
Okay, so some of them are extremely brief, just basically actions and votes, nothing more. Most of them are rather brief summaries. A few are pretty detailed summaries, not as detailed as ours are, because ours are about as close to verbatim as you can get without being verbatim. And that's really more recent. Prior to that, they've been pretty much verbatim. And I really don't see a need because everything we have is videos. So if anybody wants to see exactly what somebody said, they can just go look at the video. And our videos can be kept virtually forever. So my suggestion is that we stop with the lengthy minutes that we have and go to rather brief summaries. And in many cases, not even summaries, just basically a report was given. And if one wants to see the detailed report, they can go look at the video. Save all of that time that it's taking to do these and to then have a supervisor, basically Linelda, spend her time reviewing them all and have much more time in the office because I just don't see the need. So I kind of open it for discussion without calling on somebody. If anybody doesn't agree and you want to jump in on it, please like to see what your views are.
Mr. Mayor?
I agree. I think we
Let's hear
should
it.
shorten it, among other things. If we have detailed minutes and somebody doesn't want to go and watch the whole video and something is said in those minutes where it was paraphrased, that could come back to bite us on the bottom, because here it is, it's especially once the minutes have been approved. If we have them in a much more concise form, if somebody really is that interested, let them go back to the video.
By the way, on our videos, you don't have to watch the whole video if you want to look something up. You can just move it forward to the section you want to look at.
So the input I would give you, first of all, it's an excellent idea. I mean, to me, it's just more bureaucratic discipline that's not needed if we have the video. I think, though, it would be good to have more than just, and so there was a report, but what was the end result of whatever the conversation was? I just want to know what the result is. Yeah, lots of discussion, but what's the result? The other point to be made is that having gone back myself, even before I was sworn in here, I went to the videos to get a feel for what's been going on for the last few years. The videos back only right now to 2017 in some cases. So the question would be, I think, from Linelda, is how long do we hold the tapes? Do they go into the archives? How easy would it be to access it in case there was something that came up? The reason why I ask is the whole thing with Milani Park is a good example where we need to go back in time, maybe, looking at who did what when, given what's involved in that whole episode. So I agree, we don't need the minutes in the degree of detail that's being done. It would save time for the town, for Lenelda, and would just look at how long we can gain access to past videos and our policy on preserving those videos going forward.
I can answer that real quick. We can retain the videos for as long as we wish. And I'm sure, I'm not going to speak for Marshall. I'll ask Marshall how we can set up access to those.
Yes, so I mean, to store video, terabyte of storage, a couple $100. I mean, we could store videos, endless numbers of videos. The concern might be, is there a concern taking it beyond what is required by statute to save a record or video? You know, I think I'll be held on the exact date, but say it's 7 years. After 7 years, do you still want that video to go that far back? Then I would say if we were to change the minutes contingent on the video storage, we put a resolution together that stipulates what you want and how long you want to store these videos because it's beyond the required statute. And then we can make them available. You can compress the file and make them available off our website. It's not that difficult.
Do you all mind if I say anything?
No, of course not. You're in charge of this.
Okay. The state of Florida retention and destruction guidelines requires us to keep audio for 2 anniversary years after adoption of the official minutes. In looking at the records, we've destroyed previous clerks have destroyed the records according to the state of Florida guidelines. So our audio does not go back that far. So if
So
we're
we
going
could
to
change that. We could change that if we wanted to.
going forward, we can, but we don't have any prehistorical audio as of today, is what I'm saying. And in reference to like Milani, I believe that audio was kept. I will have to look in a box. Anything that was contentious, that required a legal action, I believe it's kept in a box in our storage room. But going forward, we can maintain according to however the commission decides.
Yeah. So we would, if we decided to move forward this way, we would obviously keep the minutes that we have and set up a system to keep the videos and audio for whatever length of time we decide we want to keep them. Greg, have any thoughts?
Real brief. Everything Commissioner David said is what I had written down. Long summaries leave risk of differences between meeting minutes and actual statements. And I'll say that I think one of the most difficult things in terms of preparation for commission meetings is reviewing the minutes and finding errors. It's just,
Right.
it's
Who
so bad.
remembers?
So I am a big fan of going to either brief summary or just actions and votes or anything like that, and just keeping the videos longer.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement. Marshall, do we have to have a motion on this or anything, or we just move forward?
What I would like to do, Lenelda and I talked a little bit, because we're going to be going beyond state guidelines, is we'll put a resolution together. Glenn will nod. Glenn nod. Okay, he's going to do a resolution which will stipulate some of these rules moving forward, and we'll take an attempt. If you want to move the date of how long you store audio longer, that's fine, but at least it memorializes what we're doing moving forward, and then we'll approve it on the consent. I'll put it on consent, so we don't even need to talk about it. We could just move to approve consent at our next meeting, unless you want to change the resolution. But the resolution will go to a synopsis with brief summary kind of concept on the minutes, whatever language we kind of exact, and that the audio storage moving forward will be stored and maintained and be available to the public on our website for X.
Just a clarification, when you say audio, we are talking audio.
Video, sorry, you're right. Video, correct. Sorry, yep.
Okay, we'll leave it in your trusted hands.
So how long would we like to keep it for? Obviously more than the 2 years.
I'd say 10 years.
What exactly what I was thinking, was 10 years.
Ah.
Love it.
Anybody disagree with that? Done. Anything else on that subject before we move on? Okay, on to Peggy. Are you ready to start talking about the beach restoration project?
Yes, thank you.
Done. Don't
try not-
test me on those pages. I read them, but I don't remember everything.
It's okay. What I've done is, I'm gonna have to shuffle some papers here, John, sorry to disturb you. I typed out my comments. It's a couple of pages. I thought it'd be more efficient considering we have virtual meetings, so I'll read it, and in a couple of locations, I'll stop and try to hold up a map. Yesterday, a couple of things occurred later in the day, which I was not able to get data to the whole commission or Linelda. So I will make it available to everyone after the meeting today. So I'm going to try to read these couple of pages and so that everyone can hear me straightforward. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to address the commission and also the residents of Highland Beach. And I know we've been under challenges due to the virus. And some of the things I might read today, I don't want them to be alarming to the residents. But I will always give you the facts and the truth. And I'm pretty assured that we will be able to do something about this, even if we just take a good look. And these are the facts. The city of Boca Raton has removed 1.6 miles of sand from in front of our town's beaches in the depth of about 40 feet of water to renourish their beaches. There are 3 sets of reefs in front of basically the keys to Martin County. This occurs about the second set of reefs in 40 feet of water. The first is 20, the third is 60. They obtained permits from Florida DEP to continue removing sand until the year 2028. Additionally, Delray Beach has FDEP permits to remove beach sand for 2 more years. And I think the commission has copies of that joint coastal project. Here's one of the maps. It's sort of hard to see for the public. Here's one of the maps. There is limited offshore sand with what's called beach compatible sand that matches the physical properties and makeup of sand already on all of our area beaches. It must be consistent in physical properties, aesthetics, and because sea turtles only nest on the beaches with the same type of sand from when they were born. This is not the first time the beach sand has been removed. To date, about half of the beach compatible sand was removed by Boca Raton and Delray Beach in 2004, possibly another era in between 2016. And I'll show you the areas of sand that have been removed, if you all can see it. They show up as the oblong squares. That's how the ships are told to dredge in a square. It facilitates quick removal. So the remaining beach compatible sand offshore is a significant natural resource. Once it's gone, we will never be able to replenish our beach from offshore submerged lands. We would have to truck it in from Central Florida sand sources or look for other remote sources, which is way more expensive, which is why our neighboring towns are taking it in front of Highland Beach. The federal government prohibits bringing in sand from other countries. Checking with other local towns, Gulfstream and Briny Breezes have lost no offshore sands to anyone. Ocean Ridge lost a little section of sand at the north end, possibly with a joint or other project with Boynton Beach. Now, how do I know this? In February and March, I received a lot of calls and, hey, what about this, about the ships dredging offshore? And my own family saw it. My own family saw it when we were on the boat. And I started checking on this. I called DEP. I called the Army Corps. Then the virus hit and I wasn't getting return calls. Then a resident who's an avid amateur oceanographer and scuba diver, charted these submerged lands on his own with his sonar, and he captured images of the sand removals. These appear as those big rectangular areas. Now here's the catch. The state of Florida owns and controls the submerged lands. They are able to permit sand removal from there. I don't have an issue with that. We don't have an issue with that, in my opinion. You can see that in their emails to the state and the county and to us regarding this. However, we may have some recourse in this permitting process. And this I just discovered yesterday while reading about 4 inches thick of materials over the weekend. The original permit was filed by Boca Raton's engineering consultant, showing an area of sand removal off Boca Raton beaches only, not Highland Beach. Then they filed a request for permit modification on May 14th, 2018, requesting changes in taking sand from in front of Highland Beach. They called this a minor modification. Let me read you the paragraph if you want. And this is their statement. The city of Boca Raton is requesting to modify the reference permit to incorporate new borrow areas in the current project authorization to provide sufficient sand source capacity for future beach placement events. Because there are no changes to the beach placement design, that is where they're putting the sand, and the proposed borrow areas maintain buffers from the mapped hard bottom, we are requesting the department to consider this as a minor modification. So taking a 1.6 miles of sand from us is minor. Now, the fact is the town of Highland Beach is not listed on any permit application map, nowhere. It is removed from maps. The first reference is lists our town as North Boca Raton. It lists the town only as Boca Raton in large, bold, black caps. At one map, they list this right over the Seagate condo in Highland Beach. I checked with other map sources online. I did MapQuest and Google, and I just pulled up Highland Beach maps or just South Florida maps. Nowhere did I see Highland Beach removed from any map. So it must have happened in one of their designs. Then on the website for Palm Beach County DEP, it lists coastal cities. It's called coastal cities. This I just found last night actually, coastal cities. It lists them as Boca Raton, Boynton Beach, Briny Breezes, Delray Beach, Gulfstream, Hypoluxo. Highland Beach is not on their list whatsoever. And it lists the rest of them through to Tequesta. And here's a photo of that if you can make it out. And again, I'll copy the whole commission on that later. I find this both strange and alarming. I could not locate any other municipality in the state where a neighboring town removed sand from another municipal beachfront submerged land. There was talk about Miami-Dade borrowing from Martin County, but I did not see a final follow through on that. Then we have a Boca Raton permits reference, the DEP Florida Administrative Rule. I'm sure Glenn knows all this, 62B-41.00. And what that says is basically that that sand removal and transfer should utilize to reduce, minimize, and/or eliminate impacts to coastal habitats and reef ecosystems. The reason that hit me when I read that is because I tried to go diving a couple years back on the second set of reefs, scuba diving, and we couldn't find it. Apparently it's been covered over by sand, possibly on these submerged lands, sand removal. And then Yamato Rock looks like a ghost town. I don't see any live coral on it. The commission was shown a picture of that from recent trips. So we have remaining beach sand of about 1.7 miles and it is not replenished by nature for thousands and thousands of years. Once it's gone, it's gone. It is our limited natural resource. So if we are hit with a major hurricane that wipes out our town's beach and threatens everyone's homes, everyone's beach access, we would have no beach compatible sand left because it was removed by neighboring towns. And this puts every home at risk and threatens our safety, security, and the rights of our residents to our beaches. It also threatens our home values. Palm Beach County sent us a letter recently stating that the state has the right to take these submerged lands. And unfortunately, we have been literally taken off their map, Boca Raton put on. I feel that we should act now to talk to authorities to discuss the future removal of our sands to the year 2028 by Boca Raton. We have until November when sea turtle nesting begins and the ships return and continue this process. If they do this for another 18 years, I don't think we'll have any beach compatible sand left. I feel we need to challenge the permits based on their false information, or shall I say misleading or mistaken information that this is North Boca Raton or just Boca Raton, the city of Boca Raton. I think I have a map I can show you. Here we go. Where the arrow points, that's where it says Boca Raton instead of Highland Beach. That's right over the Seagate condo there. And it was done on 2 other maps. City of Boca Raton. And there we go, City of Boca Raton. Nothing about Highland Beach. So I just would like to discuss what we can do about this. I don't want to, spend our funds unnecessarily, but I feel that this is a huge risk for us to just let this go. Resident, actually Jack Halpern, who came on early in the meeting, saw this on the agenda and sent me these copies of his materials, 2004, 2005. And then I found this study that was done in 2013 by the then commission. If we wanted to renourish our whole beach back then, 7 years ago, it would have cost us 14 million with sands offshore, which we don't have half of anymore. So I'm just thinking we should possibly hire an environmental attorney and see if we can't move on this and get this looked at before the ships come back in November. So I'd like to have a discussion and possibly make a motion to that effect. We're talking about our values now and in the future and the town's future for generations to come. Frankly, I was shocked when I read all this. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Peggy. Did a lot of work and we appreciate it.
Peggy,
Okay.
as I read through that material, it seems to me that there is a process for challenging this. Part of that has to do with notification. Did we ever receive notification that they were going to be doing this? Because if they didn't notify us, how would we have the right to challenge it with the state? We have to do something. We can't just sit back and do nothing because the sand is going to be gone and it puts our town at risk. So
Yes, ma'am.
Glenn, we need to know what we actually can do.
Glenn?
Also join in this by saying, having looked at the maps, Jeffrey Kleiman has done a great deal of work as a volunteer in trying to bring all of this to our attention. The borrowed sands are limited, no question about that. And yet, at the same time, as I understand it, this sovereignty submerged land easement, the SSL easement, allows Boca to go forward. And so legally, they've done all the right things. However, clearly encroaching on our frontage, even though it's not our sand, creates an obvious problem. And I'm wondering, yeah, we can take the legal approach and maybe as a parallel effort, this comes down to, I think, This is where mayor to mayor, we need to meet with the mayor of Boca to say, hey, here's what's happened. Whether it was done deliberately or by happenstance or whatever, it's leaving us exposed, and that's unacceptable. And we'd like to be able to work this out so that they can go ahead and continue to take stands, but they stop at our line. And if they are willing to do that, or even discuss that, or negotiate it in some way, then I think you have the legal option.
Mr. Mayor, could I address John's comment?
First,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Once again, I'll try to hold up a map. The reason something happened between the original permitting process and the modification, the minor modification. Because the original one did not have any sand removal slated for Highland Beach's offshore lands. But this may be why, again, from our diligent resident who has wonderful sonar. The reason they're taking Highland Beaches could be that they've removed most of their sand that is beach compatible from in front of their own city. That is, if you see it, I don't know how it shows up, but the oblong sections show most of the sand removed already for past beach projects. In which case, 2 years after they renourished back about 6-7 years ago, it was blown away by a storm. So all that sand that came from in front of their town, located on their beach, blew away in another storm. So this might be a reason. Here's another map showing where this sand removal is been taken. So that's why apparently between the first and second permits, they revised it and went with Highland Beach's offshore lands. And from what I know, I did check with former vice mayors who live in my neighborhood. John Rand from the 1990s and Ron Brown from about 8-10 years ago, and they never heard anything in their time serving about any sand removal and transfer to either neighboring town.
okay. Anybody else?
How's everyone feel about hiring an environmental lawyer that deals with this kind of stuff and figure out quickly what our options are and then decide how to move forward on it? We got to do something. We can't just, we can't take it sitting down, right?
Well, we need to hear from Glenn. What does he say in all of this?
Honestly, until I get some commission direction, I've simply saw this item, glanced through it. On its face, it looks as if, and according to the county, because you've seen the county environmental resource manager response, they believe the steps were followed. So I have not dug into this at all to see whether Boca or the county dropped the ball in any point. I'm more than happy to do that. One of the lawyers in the firm who you all don't know is Carolyn Ansay. She used to be the general counsel for the Water Management District. So she does practice in the environmental water law area. So if you'd like, I can ask Carolyn to take a look at this and see if she thinks the ball was dropped anywhere, since this is her area.
So she practices exclusively in the environmental world? Is that her real focus?
Yeah, environmental and water law. So for example, one of her clients is called the Indian River Lagoon Initiative, which is all of the counties, DEP, the Army Corps, dealing with the Indian River Lagoon, which runs from Martin County all the way up till somewhere past Vero. Another is the Everglades Foundation, dealing with issues about restoration of Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades. And again, before that, she was the general counsel for the South Florida Water Management District. So she certainly knows this area. And I would say 90% of what she does is in this area of dealing with water law, environmental law, and then FEMA is probably the other 10%.
Gotcha. How long she been with you?
She's been a partner about 5 years. She joined us about 5 years ago. And certainly if she feels when she looks at this that it needs to go to somebody else, she would probably be the best person to recommend who in the state is the best in this area.
Okay. Let's have her look at it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Yes, if I could just add the emphasis that I was looking into this basically because of these residents bringing it up. But when I discovered that the Highland Beach name had been wiped off of every map and every reference in every document I could read, I think at one, I just put it down. It was so massive in 110 pages. And then I checked with 2 engineers and they did not understand how in a car computer, what is the computer generated maps that are done in the engineering field now. Even though we share a zip code with Boca Raton, they just do not see how the city of Highland Beach would just be wiped off. It's just, that's where it really got me, that this appears to be, maybe it's an accident, maybe it's not, but it appeared that we might have a possible permitting process based on false information. That's what I got.
I fully understand what you're saying.
And Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
it does seem like maybe it was a deliberate attempt to hide what their plan was. And, you know, whether it's malicious or let's hope that it was more just bureaucratic ignorance. But either way, the problem is we're going to lose our sand if we don't do anything. If we consider
Right.
that sand important, then we need to act on it.
Well, John,
I think,
wait, let me just back up. It's not our sand.
and it's not our sand. That's true.
So we're not losing our sand, but we are potentially suffering in other ways. So we do need to take action. But Peggy, when you held up
Yes, sir.
one of those maps,
Yes,
it showed where Boca Raton was shown
yes,
on the map. It
Yes.
appeared as though where the name Boca Raton was on the mainland.
yes. On 2 of them, it was on the mainland and no
Yeah.
reference to Highland Beach. And on the 3rd, it was pasted right over the Seagate condo of Highland Beach. You're correct. The point on the first 2 is that our town's name did not appear whatsoever. There are numerous other maps. I use these as an illustration example.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying. So it doesn't look totally kosher to me either.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah. Glenn, can you put this at a priority for your associate there?
Absolutely.
Get
Yes.
some feedback rather quickly on this
Yes.
in a week.
Oh, yeah.
And
Within a
Mr.
week, I'll let you know whether we have, you know, what kind of basis we have to challenge.
Yeah,
And Mr. Mayor, I'll provide all the information I have to Lynelda Gaskins so that she can copy it for everyone and for Mr. Trosigia's office.
good.
Thank
And
you.
Then if it's not in her purview, we'll know rather quickly and then we can move elsewhere.
Yep, I'm going to be talking to her as soon as we're finished today. And if she tells me, Glenn, not my world, and I'm surprised, I'll let you know right away.
Sounds good. Okay. Anything else, anybody want to add on this subject before we move on?
No.
Okay, well done. Next, we have to approve meeting minutes from the 7th and the 21st of January. Think we can approve them both on one motion? Is that okay with everyone?
Yes,
Need a motion?
I move we accept the proffered minutes.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So done. Now we're going to move on to the discussion about a hiring freeze for the entire town employee population. And by entire, I mean to include also the police department. We've touched on this earlier, that we are moving into uncertain financial times. And my suggestion on a hiring freeze would also, though, allow Marshall to replace a direct report or someone that he feels is critical to the needs of the town. But it would still be a complete hiring freeze. But again, Marshall would have discretion if it was critical need. We would revisit in October. By then, we should have a better read on the economy and the effects on the town financials. Obviously, that's the end of budget time as well, so we'll have a better fix on our budget at the same time. And the reason I'm voicing this concern is, I mean, we all know what's happening with COVID-19 and the fact that the entire country has been closed up, as well as our state, although the state is now in phase 1 for opening. But in particular, our town is faced with the unique situation that a little over 80% of our revenue comes from our real estate taxes. But some 80% of the population in the town lives in the condos, and 2/3 of these are second homes for the condos. And that means that half of the housing in our town are second homes. So when you're dealing with a town where 50% of the housing units in the town are second homes, you know that the value of these second homes are going to take a hit. People that own these second homes obviously are from up north, New York area, New England area in general, Midwest area, et cetera. And the demand for second homes is obviously going to take a hit because of the economy, because of the loss of jobs. Not that these people are going to take a hit. And it's my belief that we're not looking at a V-shaped economy where everything is going to suddenly overnight go right back to where it was before the virus hit. I think we're going to have an extended slow growth back. That's just my opinion. It's the opinion of some other economists. And I think the more aggressive ones think that we're going to have a very quick growth back. But I'm thinking we're probably looking at a slower growth back. Although certainly US capitalism is going to prevail and things are going to be all right. But I believe it's going to take quite a while before that happens. So I believe that it is to our benefit for the town, and I think it's our fiscal responsibility to our residents to be very cautious. And that's why I'm suggesting that we put this hiring freeze on. I believe we should do it immediately. I think a resolution will have to be set. I guess the proper administrative way to do it would be what, at the next meeting, Marshall?
Yes, I would think a resolution, one stipulating some level of flexibility to make mission critical decisions and having that sunset date. And I think it protects both myself and the commission as we move forward on these decisions as to what we need to be doing and what those boundaries are moving forward. And again, I'm sure some employees are watching and are very concerned by such an action, but it's a cautious one that kind of we need to just take a pause for a moment as we look forward through some uncertainty moving forward over the next horizon. We are working, just to let the commission know, putting some final steps into our modeling, our financial model to kind of begin to anticipate some of this uncertainty, what we can be looking at. Again, you've heard it, you've seen it in different ways. Those bigger things are revenue sharing, which are based on sales tax, interest earnings on our investments. Those are the two at my forefront where we're going to see some losses. That does have an impact. I think real estate is something that we are trying to find out exactly what that might look like. And again, in government, we're a little bit on the laggard side of things. It's not going to impact immediately, but down the road. And even if on a good side of the scenario, real estate just stays flat or just goes up a little bit, we still have expense growth that will outpace the revenue growth. We are well positioned. We are a healthy town and we can handle some of this, but we just have to be very cautious as we start moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take it all the way through the end, but I guess I will for the moment. You're looking at a town like most towns that have virtually all fixed costs. There are very few variable costs here to deal with. So when our real estate starts to slide a little bit in value, you're looking at reduced values. Therefore, the only thing we're left to do is raise the mill rates. And obviously our residents aren't going to be happy with raised mill rates. There's very, very little one can do to reduce the operating expenses of the town. Marshall runs a very, very tight ship to begin with. We're not cutting salaries of our employees. Our employees have increased expenses. We cherish our employees. They do a wonderful job. They're going to get increases. Listen, we know their expenses are going to rise. We're going to take care of our people. We love the idea of having good, solid people here, and we're going to keep them all here. So the best thing to do is put in this freeze and take care of our people. It's that simple. So that's why we propose doing it. And we're going to keep operating in the town, and we're going to keep a great police force. And this is, I believe, to be the best step that we should be doing right now. So I open it for discussion. I guess I'll start with Evelyn.
I agree, because it's prudent. We're not saying that we're going to be down people that are necessary. We're giving Marshall the ability to hire people if we need them. We're not firing anyone. But it gives us the opportunity to limit our expenses. So we don't hire anybody new at the moment.
Now, we're saying he can replace somebody if it is an absolute critical need,
Right,
but it's got to qualify as really.
agreed. That they have to be there.
Yeah, when I say critical, it'd be like a direct report. If Matt left for some reason, well, you got to replace Matt, you know.
Right.
Do we have any critical positions that are open right now? I think Chief Hartman might have one.
We have a couple in the police department we'll have to take a close look at.
It's as Marshall knows, and he'll look real close. Peggy, anything to add?
No, that was my question, is did we have any open spots? So that was answered. Thank you. I do agree that this is a great way to move in these uncertain times.
Okay.
Thank you.
Greg?
First
Great.
step in getting out of a hole, stop digging. This is a stop digging ordinance. I'm on board.
Okay. I guess that's it. That's what we'll do then.
We'll put a resolution similar to the prior one on this agenda for the next meeting's consent for approval. Just
Okay.
memorializing this so we all operate in clarity.
Yeah, I mean, these are tough things to do, but we got to roll up our sleeves, and this will help us in the long run. Okay, let's move on to, they're called commission reports. This is more commission comments. Start with John.
Well, I don't have much to share, except could I just get clarification from the town manager on what the plan is to open the library and post office? I know there's some interest on the part of citizens.
It's a good question. I'm hoping sooner rather than later. I think the library's ready. Post office, we got a few tweaks, as you know. I guess I can get into it now in just a touch, but we're doing some building upgrades to try to secure public spaces. And that's probably more so for when we really open or some type of controlled opening. But I'm hoping we can do something here in relatively short order. I know that we're ready. We just want to make sure, take a deep breath, make sure it's the right time and we're not pushing too early and putting people in a compromised position. But we're getting there very close. I don't want to commit to end of the week, beginning of next week, but my head is there. So it's just a few little tweaks that I want to get clarifications from some staffers and make sure we're ready.
Okay, the other point that I make is we have 3 issues with the beaches, so to speak. One is, actually we have 4, but one is opening the beaches. Second is all of this discussion we had about sand in the boroughs is being done by Boca. The third one is really about beach restoration. That is providing some town initiative to support owners to plant vegetation in a way that will preserve what sand we do have. It would seem to me that, especially in the light of what we've learned about the sovereign boroughs that have apparently are now going to be used by Boca, and as much as we can fight that, the fact is we need to work, I think, harder to understand how we can preserve the sand that's already on our beach. And I know that there are a number of concerned citizens who have talked about this in the past, have made presentations to the town council. But I'd like to understand, Mr. Mayor, if maybe the Natural Resources and Preservation Board can be, I don't know what they're doing relative to this kind of restoration activity in the light of what we're hearing about Boca. And then, of course, all of this dovetails into Milani Park and who should be doing what over the next 90 days, because that will just keep slipping by. I'm worried about timing on that as well.
I'm not following you how this dovetails into Milani Park.
Well, I'm thinking, besides opening the beaches and what you're now going to do, Glenn's support with the conflict with Boca, but what can we do to preserve the sand on the beaches? Because we have a preservation board, right? And can we somehow ask them to present to us what can be done to support owners to do the kinds of things that need to be done to protect the sand? Planting of grasses, planting of certain vegetation, that sort of thing. Because more than ever now, we need to save the sand that we have. I think that is one dynamic way of doing it.
I understood that, but this
Okay.
dovetails into Milani Park. I
Okay,
didn't
in the case,
connection.
yeah, the connection with Milani Park really is whatever the plan is with Milani Park, it would seem with the county. We don't want to go against the county to open up the beaches because we also want them to help us out with Milani Park. Right.
And several other initiatives.
And other initiatives. But at the same time, Milani Park is a great part of our beach. Well, it's our beach that we need to also preserve and protect. So what should we be doing in that regard in protecting the Milani Park area of the beach? And whatever effort will go forward to get this whole Milani Park resolved with the county.
I can answer the Milani Park question. It was left with Commissioner Weinroth that once we got this new commission established, that we would discuss it as a commission and then go back to him with our new commission's point of view. So we've now had our second commission meeting and we need to discuss it as a commission and then go back to him.
So do you want to put that on the agenda next time for discussion or?
Sure.
I'm just trying to, make progress. Don't want it to have it just.
I think that the county is focused on different things right now. So I don't know that, but we can certainly push it along. Things are starting to loosen up a little bit now in the county. certainly by maybe not our next meeting, but the following. So yeah, let's discuss it at our next meeting, and then we can contact Weinroth. And by the time we get a meeting with him, things should be loosening up in the county, and that probably would be good timing.
And does it make sense to have our resources board to, if they've not already done so, how we can create a plan in the light of the importance of preserving our sand as it is?
Absolutely. That's what they're there for. And that's their role.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
When you see the data that I'll provide to you, it might answer a lot of Mr. Shoemaker's questions. And there were studies. I had a copy of one from 2 years ago that might help us move forward. So I'll make sure everyone has that data ahead of time.
You're talking about the beach study that was done?
Yeah, there was a whole discussion like on plantings and whatnot.
Yeah.
And how that would absolutely help preserve the beaches.
Right,
It's a relatively inexpensive approach as well.
understand, yeah.
Right.
And the town manager has that, and you know, I guess we all have copies of it, but I guess it's the next step going forward over the next few months.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's going to help protect the dunes and rebuild them. Yep. Okay.
Okay, but people, you have to understand that when you're dealing with private property, there are a limited number of things that we are able to do. We can encourage people to plant grasses and things that will have a root system. And if they have to replace anything, we can absolutely say, we're not going to approve anything that isn't indigenous. And that they have to take out invasive plants. But beyond encouraging, it's very difficult.
It's educating and motivating.
Yes.
About it.
But we have learned that we can tell them they can't use their beaches.
Yes.
How unfortunate.
Okay. Evelyn, anything else you want to add?
No, not at this point. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Peggy, anything else you want to bring up?
No, sir, no report. I'd just like to just thank the people of Highland Beach and the commission and the staff for just really trying to do the right thing in this trying time. I think everyone's
You
tried
bet.
very hard to be a good neighbor.
Okay. Greg?
Quick item, last meeting you asked me to look into our current debt for the town. Is there anything we can refinance?
Yes.
I've reached out to Matt twice. He's got a bunch of things going on. I'll get some time in front of him and we'll pull something together collectively. So the only thing was ignored. We're working on it. Just don't have any answers yet.
Okay. Yeah, we need to save something because our income is down. Rates are way off. So see if you can get something to help that out a little bit. Okay.
Exactly.
I have nothing to report, so I'm going to move on. Len, do you have anything?
Only that, I don't know if any of you have seen this yet, but you know, the governor's committee for Reopen Florida Task Force, you know, they have put out a report. You know, they outline phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We're still at phase 0, actually. And I think you're all aware of that. But what would be of particular interest to the operation of the town is that the idea of opening up commission meetings again to the public is phase 2. So we're obviously a ways to get there. And even when you get to that point, they still have some limitations on the number of people that can attend, and they'll still be encouraging, you know, remote access as well. So we're a ways away from phase 2.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Marshall, but one thing, Marshall, would you just address the bid process that we went through for underlying pipes? So
Sure.
back to John.
Yeah, so
Your comment, so everybody watching will understand it.
on the underground, yes, again, the price that you did see was just a list of arbitrary number, so we had a means by which we could have a platform to compare. The contract we inked and signed with them clearly identifies that there are charter limits and that there are certain authorizations that are needed. So we can't go over the charter on a project unless we had some hellacious event where that much sewer pipe or water main breaks. There is no authorization at the moment. There's no project. There's no emergency. There's no underground work. So it's as it comes along, as things break and we need to fix it, those are authorized by staff. And the contract we put in recognizes, and sometimes we use the word task order. You have to have a task order to move forward and it can't exceed our charter. So at no point in time, and we don't have a project. That's why it's an emergency contract. We just don't know. So that we can't spend over the limit. There are emergency spending provisions, but again, that's pretty big and we'll know that we'll need to do it and everybody in town will know we need to spend more than that if an underground problem is that kind of scope. So we have those controls in the actual written contract that Glenn's office had put together. You guys covered the beaches. Just kind of some more stuff. Again, we collective bargaining process has commenced. We're slowly getting into that. Again, we will have executive sessions once the internal collective bargaining team identifies some options for the commission to consider. So stay tuned. That'll happen probably in the next week or two. We are starting the budget season. We're kicking that off on Friday with department heads, and we're going to begin to start penciling our way through our budgets and getting prepared for that type of season is upon us. So we will be, you have that schedule. It's probably going to be a little bit tricky this year with some of that uncertainty, but I promise you we'll get through it. And again, a little bump in the road or a few bumps in the roads we can get through. We just got to make sure we navigate it properly. And we will do that. Please don't think that we won't. We're starting to get an uptick in the building permits. Things are slowly starting to loosen up in that front. And we will, I know you guys talked about your budget and I didn't mean on the beaches and I didn't say anything. I will be having a meeting with the ATM, who's the engineering firm. So we'll find out what's going on from a technical standpoint. Not if I'm not going to be vetting out if somebody did something negligent or malicious intent. I just want to know what the process is, what they did, and try to get my hands on their records, which are foiable because they are BOCA's permit file. So I'm sure I can readily get the records and at least have more facts to supplement our discussion and get that over to them as they evaluate our possibilities. I don't know if we got notice on that. I'm sure we did, but it was before I got here. I don't know that there was a notice ever provided to us. I'd hope that they would, but we can take a look around. I haven't seen anything to that effect. Other than that, you know, we're meeting, Chief and I are meeting on a regular basis with the Emergency Operations Center. Today's call was day 54. We've been in 54 straight days of emergency operations. People watching from home, you can guess that because we're meeting on Zoom. So it's going to be continuing for the foreseeable future. We will intrinsically link to our neighbors to the south to how we get through this. Our public health conditions are different. We are banging the drum to give us some relief on beaches, just so we can get people off of A1A. Those that are out on A1A and you're listening, just be careful, please. Sometimes you want to get away from somebody and you jump over a hedge and you jump into a bike lane and there's a car. Just be careful. And we will use that in the letter that I'm sure the mayor will be writing to Juno Beach. That, you know, that is a concern too, that if we get some more space to get people out rather than keeping them confined to one relatively tight linear area. Other than that, everybody's doing well here. Again, back to Commissioner Shoemaker, we're looking at opening up some level of service. Again, as you can imagine, it'll be on-demand library services at first. So you can get your materials and this and that, and they'll be ready for your pickup. If somebody can't get out or shut in or very nervous, we will find a way to get them their materials to their condo or drop them off, whatever that is. Post office will be very abbreviated hours and limitations to service, similar to that walk-up window. But we'll be hopefully getting to that, meeting with the team and kind of seeing what are we prepared for it in the right spot. Masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, cleaners. We're gonna make sure all that stuff's in place. The building again is off the ground. I signed a couple contracts to get some place. Again, those dollars were already budgeted for a renovation project, just kind of changing what renovation looks like or what security is now. Now we have viral security versus potential threat security. So it's a little bit different now. Staff's doing well. Everybody's seriousness of purpose as they come in every day, working hard, keeping the services going. And that's about all I have. Everybody stay home, stay safe, together. That's about it. I don't think I have anything else to jump on there. Just a lot of finance work, get into budget season and some of that uncertainty. We're going to really be working hard this budget season. So get some rest and we'll start meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Once, twice? Gone.
Perfect.
John? Okay, good meeting. Thank you all. And we
Thank
are
you.
to adjourn at 4:02. Again,
Thank you.
you. Be
Thanks.
safe, everyone.
Everyone,
Thanks.
please stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay safe.